Hello, everyone. This is American Contractor. Today is December the 20th, 2019. And as a first article of the day, this published the 20th of December today in Iraq. Headlines were loading and leaving. Months of protests rattle fragile Iraqi economy. I told you in the last few days with other videos that the more these protests keep going, that they'll impact the economy in Iraq. Those in the largely informal private sector are the hardest hit by the ongoing civil unrest. These are talking about not government facilities. These are private, their own Iraqi private businesses that are trying to operate in downtown. Actually, it's Al Rashid Street in the capital of Baghdad. Just read a couple of sentences here. I read this quote right here. My merchandise is worth over 1.5 million. Half of it was gone and the other half is destroyed. He will compensate me, says Salih Reda, a Baghdad merchant. With wisps of smoke still rising from the remnants of another night of violence, the workers came in the morning to salvage what merchandise they could from the torch warehouses in Baghdad's central commercial district. Boxes upon boxes of clothes, cosmetics, and household goods stored by traders in the country's most thriving market were hurled onto pickup trucks to be taken away from the Rashid Street, a historic avenue that for weeks has been the scene of ongoing violence between anti-government protesters and security forces. And one of the workers are saying, "We are loading and leaving," said one merchant. "My merchandise is worth 1.5 million. And it's here they're loading up their merchandise. With Iraq's leaderless uprising now in its third month, the protracted street hostilities, internet outages, blocked roads, and general atmosphere of unease are posing a risk to Iraq's economy. In particular, the unrest has set back the most fragile segment of the country's economy, the private sector, where business owners have faced losses for damage to merchandise and disruptions of markets, and from consumers really reeling in their spending out of fear for the future. So when you have all this chaos going on there in downtown Baghdad, the people are not going to spend their money. They're going to hold on to their money and see what happens next. That's just human nature. That's what happens everywhere in the world. So far, the unrest has not significantly affected Iraq's main economic lifeline, the oil, which brings in $6-7 billion a month, up to 90% of the state's revenue. Oil exports have not faced disruptions, according to two senior oil ministry officials. Production has not been hurt by regular sit-ins blocking roads to major oil fields in the south, home to the vast majority of Iraq's oil resources. But future investments now in question, said Zab Sethnat, co-founder of the Northern Gulf Partners, a frontier investment firm with experience in Iraq. Foreign investors have pulled out of the deals in energy and other sectors, alarmed by the extent of Iranian influence in Iraq, highlighted by the heavy-handed security crackdown on demonstrations. Quote, "We had an American backer ready to commit to put money into Iraq, and they turned around and said, look, everything I'm reading this says this is the place the Iranians are taking over, and I'm not going to put my money there." Other investors have been worried by the slowness of talks on forming a new government after Prime Minister Abdel Mahdi resigned in the face of the protests. Political blocs are expected to name a new consensus basis candidate for the premiership this week. So you already have somebody, North Gulf Partners here, an American company or corporation getting ready to invest money inside Iraq. And now it's pulled back because the area that he's investing money in is controlled and run by the Iranians. They got to get the Iranians out of there. Reform measures taken to retire key director generals over the age of 60 also cause anxieties for companies who have vested business relationships with bureaucrats. Ironically, the very issues raised by protesters on the street, including corruption, bureaucracy, and lack of adequate public services, have long been a factor deterring investments. Two industry officials who were in the middle of negotiating lucrative energy contracts said they have taken a step back until the dust settles. One said, Both spoke on condition of anonymity to not derail future talks with the government. Periodic road closures by protesters leading to Iraq's two main commodities ports in Qasr and Al Zubair have halted trade activity several times. To compensate, higher volumes of goods were imported through the border cross with Turkey in the north in late November. Hussein Ali, a potato trader, said delays at Qasr cost him $6,000 per container, so he opted for the northern land route. Customs from the ports are an important source of state revenue. So even local merchants there, they're saying, we're not going to come into the port, Qasr, and this is the Kuwaiti report, Zubair, that's the Kuwait report, Kuwait port. So they're taking out all their land goods on the northern side of Iraq, going through Turkey, or maybe in Syria, who knows, just to so they can stay out of the fray of the protesters. There are no figures to know exact economic losses suffered due to protests because disruptions, when they occur, are often temporary or reliable data is hard to come by. A military spokesperson for the Prime Minister, Major General Abdul Karim Khalaf, said that protests had cost Iraq $6 billion within the span of a month. This figure is unlikely since it would require major setbacks in oil earnings, according to the Associated Press. The impact has been indelible on Iraq's hobbled private sector. The World Bank said developing this sector was key to diversifying the oil-dependent economy and creating much-needed jobs. With poor regulations and higher startup costs, however, Iraqis have had little incentive to take the risk associated with entrepreneurship. As a result, much of the sector remains informal and limited largely to cash-based retailers who are hardly sensitive to any disruptions. We have a huge informal sector that has no chance of joining the formal sector. They have no deeds, ownership, just conventions and understandings. If something goes wrong, you are dropped. This is from the Chief Investment Officer of the AFC Iraq Fund. At Sharjah Market, Baghdad's main wholesale market, merchants said they have seen daily earnings drop since protests started in October, in part because customers are buying less and in part because of the turmoil at Rashid Street, where most store their merchandise. In southern Iraq, a rising number of medium to small businesses owners are defaulting on monthly payments on bank loans, said official in Iraq's League of Private Banks, who requested anonymity because he was not authorized to speak to the media. So now have merchants, they can't service their debts to the banks for their merchandise because of the disruptions. You see how it all trickles down and affects everybody. Iraq's growing e-commerce sector was decimated by widespread internet cuts imposed by authorities in October and November in a failed attempt to quell the protest, said Mujahid Waisi, an entrepreneur and founder of Capita, in an incubator space set to launch early next year. Even with the internet restored, because most of those items are not essential, people fear making purchases because of the situation. They want to keep money in their hands. Moreover, e-commerce startups are hesitant to promote their services online, fearing protesters will criticize them as unpatriotic. Many cash-strapped merchants have let go of workers because of the escalating crisis. It has been 25 days that I haven't worked, said Mohammed Hamid, a worker in Rashid Street. He said the shop owner he worked for told him not even to come in. How am I going to pay your weekly salary when I'm closed? So you have banks not getting their monthly payments from the merchants. You have merchants losing their merchandise because of the protests. You have probably large contract deals with the Iraq, with Gulf partners, and they're not getting theirs because Americans are saying, hey, we're not going to invest because it's all run by the Iranians. Now, do you see the problem? I hope the Iraqis get a control of this and start doing right by calming the situation down, put the confidence back in the people, change the government out if that's what they want to do, and let's get this on the right track. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up, make a comment below, subscribe to the YouTube channel, American Contractor, and thank you for watching.